Now that we know that the Native Americans are Israelites, now that we know that the Native Americans are the descendants of Jacob, and that all of their nations saw God as the immediate head of their government, and that all the other nations worshiped the one true God, let us ask some of our other witnesses who were there at the time two basic questions. The first question is, how were the Native Americans living when you came over from Europe? And two, how were the Native Americans treated by the Europeans? This is what Christopher Columbus wrote about Hispaniola. There are mountains of very great size and beauty. The rivers surpass anything that would be believed by one who had not seen it. None of them, as I have already said, are possessed of any iron, neither have they weapons. They are very simple and honest, and exceedingly liberal with all they have, none of them refusing anything he may possess when he is asked for it, but, on the contrary, inviting us to ask them. They exhibit great love toward all others in preference to themselves. They also give objects of great value for trifles, and content themselves with very little or nothing in return. Each of these islands has a great number of canoes. I saw some of these canoes that held as many as 78 rowers. In all these islands there is no difference of physiognomy, of manners, or of languages, but they all clearly understand each other. I also left them one caravel and skillful workmen, both in shipbuilding and other arts, and engaged the favor and friendship of the king of the islands in their behalf, to a degree that would not be believed. For these people are so amiable and friendly that even the king took a pride in calling me his brother. I could not clearly understand whether the people possessed any private property, for I observed that one man had the charge of distributing various things to the rest, but especially meat and provisions and the like. I did not find, as some of us had expected, any cannibals amongst them, but, on the contrary, men of great deference and kindness. In the letters of Columbus, in the translations of the letters that has been handed down to us, we find that when Columbus wrote to the king and queen of Spain, he wrote to them that he was on a mission of exploration, that he had been sent on a mission of exploration, and his mission was to come into contact with the great Khan, whom we read earlier is the King of Kings in his nation. In the book that I had read, it said that the great Khan probably refers to Genghis Khan or one of Genghis Khan's descendants. That is Genghis Khan of the Huns that had gone deep into Europe during their great expansion. And so, if Columbus was indeed on a mission of exploration, on a mission to meet the Khan of the Huns, why would he, one, take only an Arab and a Hebrew translator, as was noted by the editor? If he only took an Arab and a Hebrew translator, chances are he would not be able to communicate with Khan because the Mongolians neither spoke Arab nor Hebrew. But it's also very odd that if Columbus was indeed on a mission of exploration, that he would say this: 33 days after my departure from Cadiz, I reached the Indian Sea, where I discovered many islands, thickly peopled, of which I took possession without resistance, in the name of our most illustrious monarch, by public proclamation and with unfurled banners. And so, after describing the people to the king and queen, how the people were the nicest, most gentle people that you could ever meet anywhere, he immediately declared them conquered. And he declared them conquered simply by unfurling banners and making a public proclamation. The reason he felt that's all that he needed is because these people had no iron. They had no swords, they had no gunpowder, they had no way of defending themselves from what Christopher Columbus knew was to be an onslaught. And so he simply declared these people who had welcomed him, who had saved his life and the lives of his crew members, he immediately declared them conquered. And in other places, he wrote where he took prisoners. And the way you take prisoners is by force. Columbus also wrote that he had an agreement with the King and Queen of Spain even before he left Spain to go to the Americas. And this agreement was that he was to keep, I believe, a third of everything that he found. And a third of everything he found was to remain in his family forever. He used to be the first governor. And so what we learn here is that Columbus was not merely on a mission to find the Indians. He was on a mission to conquer new land. The reason that all of these lands was called the Indias is because that word is derived from a word that means God's people. It's also the same root of the word indigenous people. And Europe knew that indigenous peoples all over the world lived in the manner of the West Africans that they were already well acquainted with. Um, Guinea, the Congo, Mali, Nigeria, all of these nations were living the same way that the Native Americans lived. All of these nations were descendants of Israel. And so when they saw how easy it was to conquer those nations, finding out that there are other lands in other continents, they knew that these people were also of the same type, that these people were also God's people, and that these people were living with neither gates nor bars. They did not have any locks on their doors. And the Europeans know that conquering these people would be very easy. When we consider also that the Huns had so terrorized Europe, had conquered almost all of Europe, why would Christopher Columbus believe that he could go to Genghis Khan and simply unfurl some banners and make a public proclamation that he had conquered the land of the feared and notorious Huns? That doesn't add up. He knew that these lands were lands that were in other continents, in other places, but he also knew that these people were not the Huns. These people were completely defenseless. And when we dig a little bit deeper, we find that Bartolome de las Casas talks about Canoabo, one of the great kings of Haiti, of Haiti. And again, we have said that Haiti is Judah. Canoabo would have been called the King of Kings, as that is an epithet of the King of Judah. And it's very likely that Columbus knew that he was going to Haiti, and that Columbus knew that the Khan that inquired, that he wrote, inquired of Rome, of the Christian religion, that Khan is the Khan of Haiti, the King of Kings of Haiti. James Adair led a long list of people who realized that the Native Americans are the children of Jacob, that the Native Americans are Israelites. This list included William Penn, the founder of Pennsylvania. This list included Bartolome de las Casas. He wrote in 1542, a few short decades after Christopher Columbus first came to the Americas. He lived in the island of Hispaniola, that is Haiti, and his accounts are first hand. Let us see what he had to say. There is no tongue, art, or human knowledge that can recite the horrid impieties which these capital enemies to government and all mankind have been guilty of at several times and in several nations. Nor can the circumstantial aggravations of some of their wicked acts be unfolded or displayed by any manner of industry, time, or writing. But yet I will say somewhat of every individual particular thing, which is this protestation and oath. I conceive I am not able to comprehend one of 1,000. As to the firm land, we are certainly satisfied and assured that the Spaniards, by their barbarous and execrable actions, have absolutely depopulated 10 kingdoms, of greater extent than all Spain, together with the kingdoms of Aragon and Portugal, that is to say, above 1,000 miles, which now lay waste and desolate, and are absolutely ruined, when as formerly no other country whatsoever was more populous. Nay, we dare boldly affirm that during the 40 years' space wherein they exercised their sanguinary and detestable tyranny in these regions, above 12 millions, computed men, women, and children, have undeservedly perished. Nor do I conceive that I should deviate from the truth by saying that above 50 millions in all paid their last debt to nature. This is what happened when the Europeans came to America. This is what happened when the Europeans treated the Israelites of the Americas. This is exactly how the children of God were treated.